Hey everyone, welcome to the Monday night live stream. With me always is Thrashopndo, at least as much as he possibly can be. And tonight's special guest is Dave Sundstrom from The Good Stuff. I was just watching his live stream this Sunday, which was awesome. And you know, it's so interesting because I wanted to have you. You were on this live stream before when we were talking about underground music. But one of the very first videos I ever did was called Mr. Belvedere Taught Me About AIDS and Other Things I Learned from Television. And then one of the very first interviews I ever did was with you, where we talked about TV families and growing up watching TV and the lessons we learned from those from TV. So I wanted to have you on as a special guest because you were just like rattling it off. And what was interesting is you were naming shows that I wasn't naming. Like I was talking about like Alf and stuff, and you were talking about Waltons and, and things like that. You know, that was interesting.
Yeah, I just happen to be a few years older than you. That's the problem, Ian.
Oh yeah, I get that. Thrashopndo dropped out here for some reason. I don't know why. Let's hope he gets back here. Let's say hi to a few people here. And guys, any questions you want to ask me or my guest, Dave Sundstrom, about growing up Generation X, or more particularly tonight, is about the lessons we learned watching TV. And let's see. Says Lance Chaffin says, hi, you guys. Another hi, Thrash, and hi. And then Thrashopndo is back with us again. You dropped out there.
What I did was I had another channel, but I went to shut it down. I shut everything down, so I had to hop back on really quick. No technical problems this time, believe it or not.
Got a lot of highs here. Hey, everybody. Hey, Georgia Eris. Hi, Tracy Rothmeyer. Hi, I don't know how to say that. Braidwood Inn. And hi, Cindy D. Hey, Cindy D's in the house. Hey, everyone. Well, cool. Again, guys, I'm going to let you guys lead the conversation, but I kind of want to start out with this question. And the question really is, why do you think that TV pushed? There was lessons in those like Waltons and all that stuff and Andy Griffith's show. But do you see that there was kind of this push to have these lessons taught in the 80s? And if so, why do you think that was?
Well, first off, Braidwood Inn, we've got to recognize as our friend Justin
Okay.
Island. So
yes,
Justin was the feller that was on the live stream with us last week, Ian. And so that's Braidwood Inn, by the way, is a reference to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I believe it's where John Candy and holy cow, Steve Martin stayed. But in regards to your question, I think that television has always wanted to be something of an educator, and I think there's always been rare is the program that simply wants to entertain. But I will say this. Those programs that have simply wanted to entertain are some of the ones that I've learned the most from.
Really?
Well said. Well said.
Give me an insight on that one a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that. If you can give me an example, I'd love an example too.
Sure. Here's an example. Batman 66 taught me that everyone could be a hero. Everyone. We're not just talking Batman or Robin, but Alfred. Numerous times during the show, Alfred was put in situations where he had to be the hero. He had to save the day, whether it was to protect Batman's secret identity or something else. It was an important lesson that I learned, was that everyone could be a hero, no matter how big, no matter how small.
That is an important lesson. That is really an important lesson. I kind of want to go through a couple of these. I don't know if you remember this reference. There's a reference up here, but my good friend Redbeard up here, he's going to start us off on a sour note. I learned if an old white man owns a bike shop, don't go into the back room of said bike shop.
Different strokes, a very special episode.
Yeah, very special episode. And you know what? I'm forgetting myself because I'm supposed to be letting Thrashopndo be my official reader. I'm sorry, Mr. Thrash. Just an old habit.
I'll tap in now.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
So,
Yeah, very special episode. Yeah, that was a shocker there. And apparently the young black kid who played the counterpart to Arnold was actually struggling with that that issue at the time.
well, Taj Bridges has later come out since and said that I've never heard from whom, but he was actually being molested at the time while he was on the show and before that when he was on Fish as well.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know. Yes, he was the victim of abuse.
That's always a terrible thing to do. That's always a terrible thing to have happen. All right, let's get some of these comments.
Cindy D. Hello, Cindy D. Three's Company taught you to watch your misunderstandings.
I will say that Three's Company is actually one of the few shows that I think that didn't really have. That wasn't that there was never a moral lesson in there, but you know, it's one of those shows that just was a lot of fun to watch. A lot of misunderstanding.
It did have a lesson. The lesson was to not judge or think that there was wrongdoing when there necessarily wasn't. I mean, everyone thought, "Ooh, wow, a man living with two women, it has to be sorted," and it wasn't. They actually had a very healthy relationship. In fact, one of my favorite episodes is when I believe it was Chrissy's father, the minister, came to visit and was going to make Jack leave. And while Jack is leaving, he says, "Now be sure, you get what's his name to walk Chrissy home from the bus stop, and be sure." He was doing all these wonderful things to protect them, not be sorted with them. And the father minister has a change of heart and says, "Jack, this is probably the best place you could be." So there was a certain lesson, I think, involved overall, a theme, you might say.
I concur. Those are some good themes. What's some lessons that you guys learned out there? Type them in. We already had one of them. We talked about one of them. Let's hear what you have to say. I learned a few things. I learned that being able to not read was no joke. Okay, that you had to be able to read. Now, do any of you know which episodes I am referring to? No.
Was it Happy Days where Fonzie had to learn how to read?
Oh no, I wasn't. I didn't know about that one. Happy Days.
Went back to school. Here's if I were a gambling man, knowing you, Ian, I would say, is that an episode of Family Ties?
It actually isn't. But right around the same time, there was actually two episodes that were kind of concurrent. There was a Facts of Life episode. I don't know if you remember that episode where Tootie's boyfriend was not able to read. That was a big deal back then. Illiteracy or literacy, being able to read, literacy and illiteracy was even a bigger deal than not being able to read. Well, and then there was the other episode with Webster. Remember that episode where the grandfather wasn't able to read?
I honestly don't.
I'm striking out here, guys. All right, I'm gonna have you guys take over here.
There was an episode of Duets.
Okay.
Remember the show Duets? There was an episode of Duets where a gentleman that they hired to be basically a handyman. He's watching the daughter one day, and the girl wants him to read her book about polar bears. He's like, "How about Cat in the Hat instead?" And you find out the reason he's pushing for Cat in the Hat is that he has it memorized, so he doesn't have to read it. And the mother's watching this, and it deduces to her that he can't read, and it becomes a whole issue about literacy. But I do remember that episode. Yeah. Zoperxplex. The rifleman taught you, I just lost it, there we go. Taught you there was never any issue that could not be resolved with a rifle or a handgun.
All right. Any comments, Dave?
Other than it's a great show and it just a very, it's represents a different time when Westerns were king of television. That's it seems like every other show was a Western back in the day. And, good old Chuck Connors and Johnny Crawford. Great show. I will say this. I mean, I know that Zoperxplex is just joking a little bit there, and I think it's pretty funny. But as often as not, even though he was the rifleman, he also taught his son that there were other ways to settle disputes and disagreements as well. That rifle was used as a last resort. He was not, although he was proficient and excellent in using it, and was not reticent when the time was appropriate. It was a last resort. So there were lessons that I learned, all joking aside, from watching The Rifleman. But the greatest of all lessons that I learned from The Rifleman was that bond between a father and a son. And that to me was where that show excelled.
That really did seem to be quite a theme, particularly in those old westerns. And then, you can include things like homestead family shows, like the Waltons, like Little House on the Prairie. And is that family bond? I mean, I think that that guard, especially in Hollywood, was really trying to protect that. And they could see the trend of, the high divorce and families falling apart, and trying to protect that to some degree. And at the same time, then you had in the late 70s and the 80s, those people kind of moving in, and you had, hey, look, even if you are from a broken home, you're not trash. You know what I mean? You're not. Then you had all those lessons that happened too. It's not your fault, but we all know it is. No, I'm just kidding.
Braidwood Inn says there were a couple episodes in season 2 where they implied that Jack was going to try something. The babysitters. Yeah, Jack was a kind of a naughty boy, and he was always making plays for the girls. But he never did it. It was more almost good-natured tomfoolery than lasciviousness.
He was a lovable scoundrel.
There were a few episodes there where you weren't sure what was going to happen. There was one show where there was a cutaway with Jack and Chrissy, and they were kind of I think they were like in front of the couch, and they were face to face, and then there was a cutaway, but then it was revealed that really nothing happened. I don't know if you remember that episode. Yeah, funny stuff. Let's see here.
Lance Chaffin says, yes, it was. He was in one of the Friday the 13th movies.
Probably from an earlier comment or something like that.
Yeah. Tracy Roth Myers, how you doing, Tracy? I learned that I should not play ball in the house. You met my grandmother.
I don't know what show that's from. It's probably from the Brady Bunch or something like that.
Any number of them. Probably the Brady Bunch, where Marcia got...
Something like that. All right, I'll throw another lesson out. Let's see. Let me see if there's any other... she writes the Brady Bunch. Let me just see here. All right, I want to stop here for a minute, because that was an action-packed filled lessons episode. I will lead this one. I'll tell you what I learned, and then let's go and see if there's anything that you guys can fill us in on. I learned that girls can do it just as good as boys in the Brady Bunch. Probably one of the main themes. Remember when Marcia wanted to go out for it was something like akin to a Boy Scouts or something like that?
Yes. Yes, and they went on the survival hike, and she was able to follow the trail even when her scout master got lost, because she knew all the clues and whatnot. I do remember that episode. And wasn't she a better driver than Greg was too? They both took their driving test at the same time, and they had a contest to be better.
That seemed to be kind of a theme of late 60s shows, that girls are just as good as boys, kind of a thing. What do you think?
I think it's an important message, right? That we probably see it played out to an exaggerated state these days. It seems like every reboot and remake, they've taken male characters and turned them into female characters just to demonstrate, how they can. And I think it's an important message. I think that at times there's a pendulum that swings, and I think the pendulum has swung a bit far on occasion these days. I believe the term is woke. I had to look it up a while back, trying to figure out what woke meant. But I do think it's important for us to recognize that when you're thinking about gender or anything else, that there's value. While things aren't always completely equal, whether it's gender or ethnicity or anything else, there's challenges that we all face, but we can all rise to those challenges in an equal way. And I think that's definitely important. I love the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch was a great show. It's not one of my, if I had to rank my top three, those are special slots, and the Brady Bunch isn't in there. But
Right.
I certainly learned a lot because my sister loved the Brady Bunch, and so we watched those episodes. And one of those things that I learned was just the importance of treating each other with respect and dignity. It seemed like that was a message that was shared frequently as well. I remember the episode, I think Thrash, you mentioned a minute ago, the football in the nose episode. There's that's the episode with Nicholas Hammond in it, who is Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And he was Doug, big man on campus. I believe he was, I don't know if he was, I'm trying to remember if he was a senior or if he was a college guy, but he had asked Marcia out, but she was already going out with Charlie, I think was his name. I can't remember. But, and so Marcia blew Charlie off. And then when the whole football in the nose, and her friend had told her to say to Charlie that something suddenly came up. And so when she got the big nose from the football, I think Peter threw that, right? Or was it Bobby? I can't remember.
One of the boys, yeah.
One of the boys threw it.
One of the boys,
yeah. When Doug saw that nose, all of a sudden something suddenly came up, and that resonated with me. As Marcia realized how unkind she'd been to Charlie, and how she had basically her priorities had been all wrong when it came in terms of friends and how to. I think it was a dance or something that they'd scheduled. But that was an important message to me too, in terms of how you treat other people, and you see this a lot in TV. At least maybe I'm looking for it more than others. But there's this underlying message of karma. Sometimes that football in Marcia's nose, that was karma.
Yeah, what comes around goes around. It's interesting because even though I watched the shows like crazy, I was a big fan of the movies, the Brady Bunch movies. Yeah. And a lot of those came back, especially the football in the nose. And as far as like a remake or a reboot is concerned, you couldn't get too much better than those Brady movies. I think they did an excellent job staying faithful to the characters, and then also kind of tongue-in-cheek bringing it into the then modern days, the 90s. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was a fine line, right? There was a balance there between being an homage and a lampoon, and they seemed to somehow strike that perfect balance.
Yeah, for sure. And then too, I think really like when you start going into woke stuff, you talk about that. I think what happened was we moved from just benign lessons that everybody needs to learn to, hey, these kids are growing up without parents and they're latchkeys, and we got to make sure that they understand that they're valuable and stuff. And then you get into the 90s, and you started getting into a little bit of indoctrination. It's like it went from lessons to issues to issues to agendas, basically, kind of a thing. And now it's just like, well, if you're not on some agenda, then you're not going to get on TV. I still love TV. I still watch it. Don't misunderstand me. I know how to, I know how to do. I know how to eat chicken and not eat the bones at the same time. I'm real smart that way. I think everyone is as well. But it's just an interesting plot course that it went through there.
Cindy D, FGIF Fridays always taught lessons about the importance of family and friendship. When you heard the music, the moral lesson was coming.
I bet she means TGIF.
That's kind of what I was leaning towards too. Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what TGIF is. That just thank God it's Friday?
That was the whole ABC set of shows that were on Fridays for quite a while. So you had Step by Step, Full House, shows like The Family Matters, I believe, was on. And there were a lot of great lessons that were taught from watching those shows.
I remember
Speaking of Step by Step, that was that was pretty much a remake of the Brady Bunch with Suzanne Summers and Patrick Duffy.
Really
Yeah.
was. Exactly. Yeah, it really was it.
They didn't do it as well, though, right?
At all.
Yeah, it wasn't the first. It wasn't the most original.
Redbeard Video says, I learned that being in radio looked like the coolest job in the world. I also blame TV for making me broke because of that lesson.
I think there's probably more to that story, or do you guys know what he's...
Well,
Well, he's got the perfect face for radio.
Right. You have a face for TV or a face for radio?
Sorry, Redbeard. I couldn't resist. I guess he's saying that the money was in TV, not radio.
Yeah, I guess so. Let's see. I'm trying to get down to actually some comments pertaining to the show. There's a lot of comments between people and stuff like that. That's
Which
awesome.
Is great. We love
for sure. Got another one here.
Awesome. Redbeard Video. I learned that somehow you can effectively draw a very successful comic book while wearing a puppet on your hand. I also learned that despite awful writing, Ted Knight is the funniest blanker ever.
Okay.
And of course, he's referring to Too Close for Comfort, a very fun sitcom show from the early 80s.
Did you like that one, Dave? Were you into that?
Yeah, I certainly was. It's Ted Knight, so
yeah,
it had a talented cast. I'm trying to remember the name of the lovely blonde that was on that show.
Lydia Coronel, over the moon for.
Yeah, she's and then even the older sister was the girl that was in The Warriors, so I liked her.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Bullock. Jim J. Bullock, Jim J. Bullock, I think. Very funny. But Ted Knight, right? Ted Knight. We're talking about not only, from the Mary Tyler Moore show, but also the narrator on Super Friends. How could I not love that dude?
Was he the narrator on Super Friends?
Oh, sure. Just hear it in your head right now. Meanwhile, back at the...
I had no idea.
He did a lot of cartoons back in the day. He did Journey to the Center of the Earth cartoon as well, by the way.
Yeah.
There were too many lessons in the Hall of Justice cartoons to really to even go through. The one thing I remember is at the end of every show, the criminal kind of comes to his senses, like, oh, I don't know, because I shouldn't have done that and all this stuff. Can I redeem myself? And the superheroes would always say the same thing. They would always say something like, well, I can't, you got to face your crime, but I can promise you a fair and speedy trial. And that's what they used to say almost at the end of every episode when they would catch the criminal. So you learned a little law back then. You learned a little law. You get a fair and speedy trial.
Cindy D. Good times and 8 is enough taught me how talented families were. Use your talents for good.
I guess. I don't know. I do remember 8 is enough, watching it on occasion. I was never really a Good Times fan. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say, sorry, it just clicked in my head because I didn't want to miss this. But the one with that we were just talking about, the show we were just talking about.
Too Close for Comfort?
Yeah, Too Close for Comfort. That kind of reminded me of a little bit of a takeoff of Three's Company, right? I mean, you had the two girls and you had the guy, and then they lived downstairs, and then he live upstairs or something like that, or was it?
No, their friend Jim, who actually was gay, he was their friend who just sort of came over and had wacky adventures, but he wasn't living with them. They lived in it was an in-law apartment under their parents.
Oh, okay.
And Ted Knight was their father.
Yeah, but the marketing was, when it first came out, the marketing was, similar in that you have two sexy girls living underneath their parents, that kind of thing, and so I can see where you would draw similarities, particularly if you didn't watch a ton of the show.
Yeah, and instead of Jack pretending to be gay, they just said, well, let's just make the guy gay.
Well, I don't think the character was gay on the show. But the actual actor is, right, Thrash?
Yes, he is. And I believe in the show it was intended to be ambiguous because you didn't see a lot of openly gay characters on television at that time. The first one, to my knowledge, was on Soap.
Soap, yeah.
Remember,
Jody.
yeah,
Billy
exactly.
Crystal. Yeah.
And Billy Crystal, and that was really pushing the envelope. So I
It
think
sure was.
their friend whose name eludes me, but Jim was his name in real life. But they left it sort of you whether or not you could make up your mind. But he certainly did nothing to hide his.
He was
preference.
flamboyant.
Yeah, thank you. Zoperxplex. Bonanza was about family bond.
I have to say here of Bonanza, I never really watched an episode. I don't think, I think I have. I think it's been on, but I don't think that I remember one instant, at least maybe I remember it. Maybe it was just from friends talking about it, where they actually spanked a grown woman. You remember that? This girl was just a terror. She was an older terror, and I guess the father finally was fed up with it and just bent her over his knee and gave her a whooping. And
yes, we have no Bonanza.
I wasn't a Bonanza fan. I really wasn't too much of a Bonanza fan. What about you, Dave? Did you like Bonanza?
I love the show. I've done a number of videos on Bonanza, and I like to call it Bonanza, so people will correct me on that. I don't know why. It just intuitively comes out as Bonanza, fancier that way, I guess. But Bonanza, I love the show. I have been a fan of Lorne Greene and his work forever, as well as Michael Landon. So, and I mean, it's another one of those shows from the 60s. I think it might have even started in the late 50s, but it's another one of those shows where there's a tremendous amount of, because they weren't really trying to teach lessons. They were trying to just tell good stories, but the characters had such a strong moral compass that you just learned by watching. And that's one thing about the Cartwright family. They had, particularly Ben, the patriarch of the family, he had a strong moral compass, and he was always teaching his boys how to do right.
It was kind of like Louis L'Amour books, but live action kind of Louis. I don't know if you guys ever read any of those books. They were super popular Western books.
My old man loves them. He talks about Louis L'Amour all the time, but I just get mine spoon fed through the that big one-eyed beast when I want a Western.
I always wanted Mr. Okay. Oh, sorry. I always wanted Mr. Cartwright to marry the mom from the Big Valley, and then they could have one great big family.
That would be awesome, yeah.
The Ponderosa Bunch. Yeah. That would have been cool. Cindy D again. Brady Bunch taught me that families are different and come in all shapes and sizes. Yes.
Indeed. Good lesson, especially for people, the children who are just victims of maybe what's gone on with their parents and stuff like that, with divorces and remarriage. Of course, they were both in the Brady Bunch. They were both widowers, right? Widow and widower. Yes. Yeah, that was a big trope earlier, especially with widower dads, like, because you could have all the kind of zany father stuff and zany, my three sons and stuff like that, without having the taboo of divorce.
Braidwood Inn says, I'm Frederick. I'm 14 and I'm impossible. He still was impossible on the Brady Bunch.
He's talking about Nicholas Hammond. That's from Nicholas Hammond was also in The Sound of Music as Friedrich.
Oh, okay.
Frederick.
All right.
Good catch, Dave. Thank you.
Let's see some of the other ones here. Let's see. Let's get this one here.
Oh, Mr. 79 Man says, I liked the Brady Christmas special from the late 80s. I kind of tuned out by that point from the late 80s.
It was called A Very Brady Christmas, and it was the movie that spawned the Brady's TV series that was kind of a dramedy in the it was on CBS, ran instead of a half hour, it was a full hour. And the thing I remember most about the Brady's was that it had Martha Quinn, VJ Martha Quinn from MTV,
yes,
as Bobby Brady's wife.
Yes.
Oh,
I remember that
Wow.
image. I do remember that now.
I remember that show. I watched it when it came out. The not the movie. I watched the movie, and the thing that stuck in my head about that was they put their Christmas tree up on Christmas Eve, and I thought, who does that? I like, is that? I didn't know if that's a thing or not. But do you remember that, like the whole Christmas episode, and then at the very end, right before Christmas Day, they put their Christmas tree up, and I'm thinking, this has got to be. I gotta not understand families.
Yeah. I don't remember that, but if that's the timing of it, that's just not even realistic. Who does that?
No.
Not even realistic at all.
Lynn Chauvin says, MacGyver taught me you can make anything with a Swiss Army knife and duct tape.
And gum. You need some gum.
Yeah. Were you a fan of MacGyver, by the way, Dave?
I didn't watch a ton of MacGyver. I enjoyed an episode or two on occasion, but that I wouldn't call myself a fan of the show.
Were those sometimes, like in the 90s, this happened to me. Like, so in the 80s, I was real connected to the television, and that's mostly because I was home. I was a kid. I was home. So, what do? You're with your family. You don't have a car or whatever. And in the 90s, my connection with TV was a bit spotty. And I'm wondering, it was like here and there, I'd make time for shows, but I was out with friends and I had a job and, building a young man, building a family and stuff like that. And I was wondering if that happened with you as well in the 80s. Was the 80s kind of your spotty era?
Late 80s. So I went on my LDS mission when I was 85. Or in 1985. And so from 1985 to 1987, I was pretty much out of the loop. In terms of television. When I came back, though, I did try to make up for lost time. But you're right. There were other things going on between school, work, and courting, dating, right?
Yeah, right.
It was a busy time. And so things like I just wasn't able to dedicate the amount of time to my good friend television that I would have liked to.
I hear you. That's what happened with me. So, I mean, when you say 87 to 85, that's exactly the time when or 85 to 87 was exactly MacGyver era episodes.
Yeah.
And my stepdad was really into MacGyver, and my mom was married to a few years to this guy, and we were watching MacGyver almost. There were tons of episodes. MacGyver, Spencer for Hire, The Equalizer, those kind of shows were really interesting.
Yeah, all great shows.
But mid 80s kind of shows. I remember one time when MacGyver used some chocolate bars to stop a leak. I don't know if you remember that episode or not, but he used a chocolate bar, and he's talking about the chemical compound, whatever. And I remember him taking a sink off too, like just taking a sink off, like, to use it for something. I can't remember what. And I'm thinking, my gosh, you need tools. Like, it's so hard to like take a sink off, it's very difficult to do that. We got Thrashopndo Pawns back on the line here. You're just in time to be my reader, Thrashopndo.
Good. Mr. 79 Man, also from 1969, The Voice of Christmas was a touching episode. I'm guessing he means Ted Knight.
I don't know. Christmas. Maybe he's just talking about a show called The Voice of Christmas.
Could be. Zoperxplex. The Partridge Family taught me you should not be self-conscious about braces. No, you should not.
Yeah. Self-image is a big one, too, that they try to get across. Like, you can't help it. You just got to be the best. And if somebody judges you for your looks, then that's on them. That's them. I think. I also remember this little episode where, do you remember the episode? Were you a Partridge Family fan? I know you were, actually, Dave. So I don't know why I'm even asking you. I know you like the Partridge Family.
Yeah, I watched reruns of the Partridge Family growing up. So that was another one of those shows that my sister Valerie, who was just a little bit younger than me, liked to watch. So I was always up for watching TV with family members, and it's kind of a bonding thing to sit there and say nothing to each other and just watch TV.
Right. All right. Sit around a screen. It's great.
Yep.
I of course I watched it in rerun as well. But the episode I remember was, or the episode that's coming to mind, was the one where Danny Bonaducci, I don't know his name in the show, but
Danny.
he was
Danny.
Danny Partridge. Hey,
There you go.
hey, you think I'd be able to figure that one out, right?
We knew the last name, just not the first name. So,
he's listening. David Cassidy, David Partridge, is writing songs in the next
Keith.
room. Oh, Keith, yeah. What the heck? and Danny listens to him, and he comes up with them himself. Remember that? And then he comes and he's like, I just learned this song. And then so he had to write a horrible song so that they could know that he was just listening to it and absorbing it in his dream or whatever. So yeah, cheating doesn't pay or whatever.
even
But
when
he
it's
doesn't.
inadvertent.
Huh?
When it's inadvertent, because it was like sort of sleep cheating.
Through osmosis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He comes up with the song and they're all, I guess Danny's the songwriter of the family now, Keith. All right, this is going to be one you're going to like here.
Mr. 79 Man says, Andrew Griffith Show episode, The Christmas Story from 1960 is great.
I'm sure
It
you have
really
some
is.
stuff to say about that.
I sure do. It's one of my favorite holiday episodes. Andy Griffith Show only did one holiday or one Christmas themed episode. It was during the first season. It was back when Eleanor Donahue was still on the show, and it was a wonderful story. You know, when I think back to major things I learned from TV, the Andy Griffith Show plays a huge part in my formative years. It's one of the top 3 slots, and you know, that show taught me, whether it's the Christmas Story, that episode, or I saw in the chat earlier they were talking about Opie the Bird Killer. Another one of my favorite episodes is Man in a Hurry. Mountain Wedding is fun with Ernest T. Bass. But the thing that Andy Griffith, that show taught me is that it's important to slow down and just enjoy life. You know, we can life moves at a speed, if you let it, that is just too darn fast. And sometimes you have to be really conscious and purposeful about slowing things down and enjoying life.
Mm. Well said. You know, with the Andy Griffith Show, it was one of those shows that was wholesome, and the lessons that came from it were like organic, not imposed. You know what I mean? I mean, in the late 70s and the 80s, the lessons seemed to be very imposed. It was just like, here's what we are going to talk about today. And in the Andy Griffith Show and other shows of that era, that golden age of television, I think it was really, look, this is what family's about, and this is what life's about, and this is how it works. And these are the things that you need to know if you're going to be a functioning member of family and life and all that stuff. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about that previous era that I grew up watching, you know, like Beverly Hillbillies and stuff like that. Even though that was funny, but it wasn't. There were lessons, but it wasn't lesson-y. You know, it wasn't like, today we're going to talk about split families. Yeah. Today we're going to talk about, and I miss that. You know, I miss that to a degree.
A good lesson can be absorbed without bashing it over somebody's head. I remember Dinosaurs did a great bit about that. Remember the show Dinosaurs, the comedy?
Jim Henson. Yep. Very
good. Yes. They did an anti-drug episode, and at the end, Robbie, the son, breaks the fourth wall, and he goes, "People, you don't want lesson-y shows like this. Look at me. I'm talking to the camera. You don't want stuff like this. So stop doing drugs, and TV will stop making you these preachy episodes." And I'm like, that's perfect. And that was so true, because in the 80s and early 90s, they hammered the lesson over your head. They really just smash. And, you know, right. If you have good writing, you don't have to do that. Zoperxplex.
Right. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. The mouse is a little clicky. Sorry.
Yeah, the mouse. Superman says, the Mary Tyler Moore Show taught me that when the pressure is on, you stick to your principles.
Good one. Let's hope your principles are good.
Well, or the whole point is lost. It all started. Oh, sorry. Braidwood Inn. Dave, you had to remind me of Stacy again.
Yeah. So we were. So I think it's on my latest video. I can't remember if it is on one of my last videos. There's a comment. He and I were going back and forth about something, and he brought up Stacy Keenan, who was one of the. Oh, we were talking about My Two Dads. Perhaps on the live stream yesterday, I can't remember. But anyway, Stacy Keenan was in My Two Dads. She was the girl that had the two dads, and she was also in Step by Step. So bringing back up Step by Step today reminded Justin of that.
I remember Stacy's mom, but
yeah. I remember her as well. Didn't she used to be a Sports Illustrated supermodel?
Oh, I'm just doing the song from Fountains of Wayne.
Yeah, sure I'm talking about the music video.
Yes, that was who played her in the music video.
I'm drawing a blank.
But yeah, she was an '80s swimsuit model who still had it going on, even though she was 20 years later. Yeah, she sure did. But there we go.
Right on.
Braidwood Inn. Mama's family taught me I liked Lola and Bubba more than those two awful grandkids.
I was actually a fan of Mama's Family. I thought Vicki Lawrence. I thought it was an interesting show. I didn't love it.
They took a bit from Carol Burnett and turned it into its own thing. And I remember when I first saw it, I thought it was a joke. And they're like, no, they turned it into an actual show. So hats off.
Yeah. What did you think of the show, Dave?
I enjoyed it. I feel like it at times. There were moments that I enjoyed more than others on that show, and I enjoyed it more probably in limited doses. I liked it on the Carol Burnett show in 5 and 10 minute doses as opposed to a full half hour. But the cast was so talented. You mentioned Vicki Lawrence, but Ken Berry as well, who I'm just a huge fan of from his F Troop days and Mayberry RFD. So how could I not enjoy it? Mm-hmm. Really talented man.
Well, I did learn a lesson from that show, and that is credit card debt is no laughing matter. It's no joke.
No,
I don't know if you remember that episode or not, but Mama can't stop buying things off QVC TV. And they have to, at the very end of the episode, they have to send it all back, and she has to say goodbye to all of it. And because she runs up her credit, she just can't say no. And they have to cut her credit cards and all the stuff so that she can learn to say no.
Zoperxplex. 70s television taught me that America is blessed with many beautiful women.
I can't disagree with you on that one. I think just about every show teaches me that lesson.
Mr. 79 Man says, I'll come in again. G.I. Joe taught me that knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
Not the whole battle. Half the battle.
Were you watching cartoons when that G.I. Joe was out by then, or were you kind of grown out of that?
I kind of tuned out. It was mid-'80s.
Yeah.
I was in high school. And, I did still watch the Transformers. Guilty pleasure.
I was still kind of young, so I did watched all the way up till I was 12. I was definitely one of those kids who went a little too far past, dressing up for Halloween way later than I should have, kind of a thing. Like, what are you doing here? So I did watch a little too much G.I. Joe, and I do remember that knowing is half the battle. Of course, you have to live under a rock to not know that, even if you didn't know a single episode. Yeah, go ahead.
Danny's out there, and Danny, you'll know this, but I'm going to ask you guys while you're here. Who's the only real person to actually get their own G.I. Joe doll while the series ran?
I don't know.
I'll let you guys know that.
Right? He's a wrestler, right? Thrash?
Yes, he was a wrestler.
Yeah, I just don't
You're
know.
happy there.
Yeah, I don't remember the name. Although Danny made a comment earlier about us, Ian, you're always scheduling this live stream over top of his wrestling.
That's a running complaint.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a running complaint to his.
Yeah, and you know it's important for him to watch the wrestling because, and you'll have to tell us the answer here in a second, Thrash. But because there are a lot of important lessons that we can learn from the great dramatic event that is professional wrestling.
Okay.
And I'll give Danny another minute. I won't keep you in suspenders. It was Sergeant Slaughter.
Sergeant Slaughter. Yes. I was that was going to be my guest actually. I'm gonna throw a couple of these out here. Let's see. Well, let me just say that. Well, let me just put this up here.
Frank Myers, played by Tony Geary, a.k.a. Luke from GH, and the other gay guy was Asa Buchanan from Days of Our Lives.
I don't know. That must have been a reference to the videos or something like that. Or not the videos, but the inside chat that's going on.
And I'm guessing the GH was General Hospital. That's my guess. Because Luke and Laura, yeah.
Oh, look at this.
Oh, because Roth Myers. Martha Quinn was on Golden Girls. Everyone was on Golden Girls.
Was it? That was one of those shows I did not really get. I mean, I watched a few episodes, but then I didn't. I was never really into it, even though it was on when I was a kid. And of course, you know, I mean, a young boy watching shows about grandmas was just not my deal. That was just not the thing I was really into. Never really
romantically active.
Never really a fan. Too much of that show. What was your opinion of the show, Dave?
I enjoyed it. So you know, there's very few shows that I can't say I didn't enjoy. It was a show that I did watch, not regularly, but when time afforded me, because it was again in the. I'm trying to think the exact time frames, but I'm thinking late 80s through mid 90s. Golden Girls was on, and so I was doing other things. But when I could, I really liked the cast. I thought the cast was incredible, and so I watched it. And to Thrash's point, there were lots of great guest stars on that show.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it. I mean, it was on, but I just really wasn't into it. It just wasn't my thing. There was a couple of shows like that, you know, that I know that other people really enjoyed, like the Barney Miller show. It was maybe I was just too young for that one or something like that. But I know that was like one of those acclaimed shows that people really, really enjoyed. But I was really too young when that show was on, so I didn't really get the jokes.
Also, a lot of it was humor about New York. Now, we had lived in New York for a while when I was a kid, so it kind of, you know, resonated with me. But if you've never lived in New York, at least half the humor would just go right over your head. You know what I'm saying? Because it had that very New York City feel to it. Other shows set in New York don't seem to suffer from that problem. But Barney, because it was a cop show, you know, you had to have been in New York and seen all these crazy characters to understand. Oh yeah, you know. So that may be part of it as well. I
had an idea for a comedy, and I'm going to say it here because you know the chances that I'm going to run into some executive producer and they're going to listen to me at all about this is really very limited, and probably somebody else will pick the idea up, and you know by next year I'll be watching my comedy show on television. But I would rather see it get made than not get made. But you know what I think would be a good idea for today would be like a legal comedy, like Night Court kind of, but not like Night Court, like kind of like what Scrubs is, except for with a legal bent, like inside a law firm, maybe. Like I don't think that happens that often, where you have a comedy inside a judicial ideas, you know. So I know that Night Court's doing that right now, but that's not. It's other than that, I can't think of one. I think it'd be a good idea.
You could have one of the pool of lawyers be engaged to someone from the city prosecutor's department, so you could have the old interplay between the prosecutors and the defense attorneys. I could see that. That could play. That could play.
Yeah. Well, we're going to write the script. All of us are going to write the script together. All right.
Ooh, Alfred Odinardi, who I always get your name wrong, but hopefully I'm pretty darn close there. Out of college, I've been servicing computerized and robotic devices nearly 40 years now. Star Trek, Lost in Space, $6 Million Man were among the shows that kind of introduced me to the uses of technology. Great anecdote.
Great anecdote. I don't know. This is kind of interesting. $6 Million Man. What do you think you could get for $6 million these days if you were all messed up in an accident?
Not much.
Retractable fingernails, maybe.
They were going to update that movie. At least it's been in pre-production for years with Mark Wahlberg, and they hit up the price tag to $6 billion.
Oh, so he was going to be
he's going to be the $6 billion man if that movie ever gets made.
Yeah, they're going to be like, we barely fixed one eye for $6 million. So yes. Well, you know what's interesting, Dave, is I made the thumbnail very specific, because if you notice the thumbnail for this show, on one side in the middle is the icon for your show, and on one side is the Andy Griffith icon, and then on the other side is the Family Ties icon. I thought that was kind of you're bringing the golden age of television and one of your all-time favorite shows, and I'm going to be bringing kind of the Family Ties stuff. And the reason why I brought that up was because we just watched last night one of the most intense Family Ties episodes that there are that ever have been, and that was the one where he lost his friend. I'm sure you remember the episode. Maybe you were on your mission when that happened, when the episode aired. But it's one of the most intense episodes, and it was a lesson. Even though it was lessony and preachy, I think it was an episode that needed to be said, because it was about losing people. It was about losing people who are close to you, and that it happens. And the turmoil that Alex went through on the show was, well, first of all, I mean, Michael J. Fox is in my opinion one of the best actors I've ever seen. And do you remember that episode? Did either of you chime in here? Did you watch that episode, or did you get to see that episode? It's an hour-long episode.
I'm racking my brains, and do you have any? I can't quite pick up the context. So I don't know if I saw it or not. He
loses a friend who gets in a car wreck that he's supposed to be in, and it's called I think it's called I Alex, or I Am Alex, or something like that. And it's an hour-long episode where he has at the very beginning he has these delusions where he sees his friend that just got in this car wreck, and he has to go into therapy. And he kind of works through this chaos of life and coming down to believing in God. Basically, that's kind of what it came down to. And he says, "Well, I don't believe in a God like this, whatever." But the idea is if there's a God, then there is some sense to this chaos, even if I don't understand it. At least somebody understands it. And I think it's an important episode. All religious stuff, for me, particularly aside, I think it was a very important episode. So let me get to some of these here. I'm trying to find some of these that.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Ian. There was a comment earlier from Zoperxplex about what Sesame Street taught him, and it was the episode where Mr. Hooper died. And if you remember right, they took that when the actor who played Mr. Hooper passed away, they took that real life experience used it as an opportunity to explain to young people about death. And, so I haven't seen the Family Ties episode, and it sounds to me like there were a lot of different themes that were explored in that Family Ties episode as well. But it's rare that television really tackles it, and I think. That was a great comment by Zoperxplex, and I think there's value in exploring the range of feelings that we all go through when we lose someone close to us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. If I highly suggest it, I highly suggest watching that one. It's very good. Here's a few more. I'm trying to go down. I'm sorry if I skipped anybody, but we're backed up on comments here, and I am trying to get to as many of them as I possibly can to. If I didn't get to yours, please, please don't take it personally. I'm a moron behind a camera with a microphone, and that's all I am. So go ahead.
Zoperxplex says, Captain Kirk taught me the definition of what a man is.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so we've talked about Andy Griffith. I brought up Batman at the beginning. Star Trek completes the trifecta of my 3 favorite TV shows. Although, you know what? Yeah, definitely Captain Kirk was a man's man, right? And a ladies' man as well. But Star Trek taught me about hope and optimism, and you know, to have that ability to dream of a future where not only can nations get along, but worlds can get along, and just the thrill of going out and being an explorer. Those were the things. But hope is the word that really comes to mind when I think about Star Trek. Every episode was filled with hope.
Yeah. That's really true.
It certainly is. And one of the things that I always picked up from Star Trek, and of course, Captain Kirk was your typical two-fisted hero who normally got out of scrapes by taking people down, never killing them, always just knocking them unconscious with a good fist or something. But the thing that I learned most from Captain Kirk was his devotion to service and duty. That don't worry about me, protect my ship. He was always willing to lay down his life for his people. And I thought that was a very valuable lesson. He wasn't like a lot of times it's it's cold in here, throw another red shirt on the fire. And people certainly have that interpretation. And God knows it did happen a lot. But the truth is that Kirk was constantly laying down his life, or at least risking his life, for that of his crew and his ship. And you got to give him full credit for that. You really do.
Yes, yeah, for sure. All right, we are coming up on the close of this episode. This was a great episode. There are so many lessons that we could all learn. In closing, I just want to take a few minutes for each person. I want to talk about this question here. Dave, what are you watching on TV right now?
Holy cow, not a lot right now. Let me think about that. We watched the Goldbergs. I love the Goldbergs, which is Adam Goldberg, who's a real life person. His memories of the 80s, and every episode, usually at the end, will have an actual videotape. He was a constant videographer as a kid. We'll have a videotape and include a real scene that the whole episode was based upon or influenced by. So really enjoy that. I have been watching a little bit of Star Trek Lower Decks. And let me think what else. There's we've been watching recently. We watched Aquafina. There's a show called I Am Nora from Queens that is on, I'm not sure. Oh, it's on HBO Max. So there's a handful of shows that we've watched. The one that I recommend to everyone, every time someone says they don't make them like they used to, I point them to the Goldbergs, because that is a show that is being made like they used to, and is one of those where there's lessons there every week. Patton Oswalt is the narrator, kind of like Daniel Stern used to be the narrator on the Wonder Years. Patton Oswalt is the narrator. He narrates as a grown-up Adam Goldberg. And every week there's lessons to be learned. But the most important thing about that show is the comedy and just the entertaining and learning the value of family. Family always comes first. And so I love that show, and I'd recommend it to anybody that says that they don't make good television anymore.
Thrashopndo, what have you been watching on TV these days?
I've been catching up with Rick and Morty. I'm completely addicted to Rick and Morty.
Did you see Christopher Lloyd as a live action Rick?
I have not. I have not.
Go hit Twitter. There's actually, they filmed a scene with Christopher Lloyd as Rick.
I love it. I love it. I still haven't seen the last episode. It was on last night, but I crashed early. So, but I will check out the Christopher Lloyd. Love it. Love it. Even not seeing it, I know I love it.
There's a girl out there who does parody, not parody music. I'm trying to think of the word. It's not parody, but it's like music about television shows, and she's coming out, or she has come out with a concept album of Rick and Morty. And she used to go by the name Cosby Sweater. It used to be kind of her title, but I think she kind of took that down, and I think it's Serena Gomez or something like that. It's very interesting. But she does one on The Hobbit. She does one on Millhouse. She does one on Arrested Development. She's got a lovely voice. And the Rick and Morty one, I was looking forward to, and I haven't caught up with her for a while, but I will try to find that, and I'll try to send you the link to that. It's a really good. She's a little folksy, just kind of the guitar and her voice kind of a thing for most of them. But she does one on Everything's Coming Up Millhouse. It's hilarious, and where she kind of goes through all that stuff. I'm actually right now watching The Mentalist. We're kind of
them all. Loved it.
We're going through The Mentalist. We're going through, at least we go through Family Ties, of course, and a little bit of House here and there. We just got done with Bull. I don't know if you guys were Bull fans or not.
Bull. Bull's good. Yeah.
But anyway, well, tell everybody.
One more. Just thought of. We just started watching Only Murders in the Building. It's on Hulu.
Oh.
And it stars Steve Martin Short. And what reminded me was you said Selena Gomez is in that as well. And Sting and a bunch of other. It's really great. It's from the creative mind of Steve Martin. So it's a series, a limited series. I think there's going to be 10 episodes, and it's really fun.
Only Murders in the
Building.
In the building. All right. Tell everyone where they can get a hold of you. I mean, they obviously know Dave, but just in case somebody out there who likes me and hasn't heard of you, which I think is impossible, just
Google Dave Sundstrom.
Sundstrom.
That's all it takes these days.
Okay, and Thrashopndo?
You can find me at Thrashopndo. I'm putting together some new material. I know I promise. Hey, it's after Labor Day, so the season has lifted its weight off of me, by the way. I got some stuff that I've been polishing that I'm going to get on there real soon. I have some unpolished stuff that I'll probably get out there first. But again, go to Thrashopndo Ponds, my content channel, and just tell me what you think of my old stuff. The oldies but goodies.
Love those dad jokes, Thrashopndo.
They're good. They're good.
Thank you.
All right. We are going, please like, comment, and subscribe to all these people's channels and my channel as well. Share it on your favorite social media. This has been a lot of fun. There were a lot of comments, and I feel really bad that I didn't get to all of them, but I want to let you know that you guys really make this show special to me. Seriously. I look forward to certain things during the week, and one of the things I really look forward to is doing this live, because you guys really are interactive, and it really means the world to me. So thank you very much. I love all of you. Take care.